So, hi, this is Nikki, and I'm here again with Michael Olinsky, and we're going to be doing one of my bare bones battle reports with a little bit of meat on it because we have our commentary here. We were actually both the participants for this fight. I was playing Taker Tribe, and you were playing Boulderhead. So we did actually cover the first game you had with Boulderhead against Malone Screen's Soul Blight army. And what were kind of some of the takeaways you had when going up against Soul Blight, and what worked with you and what you were kind of afraid of, though, was that you're going to have to work around with your army? Because that was actually a very fast fight for you.
Well, one of the main things I was concerned with was being surrounded, with their ability to outflank basically whatever they want in the army. That was a big issue for me because I might only have, I have 6 units. So I was like, okay, basically it's going to be all or nothing. And that's how I go with most of the games with them. And of course, everyone's afraid of Manfred. So I was worried about that as well. But it went better than I thought it would, actually.
Were you expecting the kind of damage output that you got from the mortal wound charges against Soul Blight that you were able to put out with? Was that like kind of par for what you were thinking of you were going to get from it, or did you kind of like, I wasn't expecting it to be this bad?
Yeah, basically, this was the first game I had played with the army the way I wanted it to go, and I was pretty surprised, happily surprised with the amount I was able to shell out, and just the ranged capabilities I had were actually pretty good as well. You look at the army and you're like, okay, big guys, big monsters, we're going to melee you to death. But I was throwing mortal wounds across the table. That's pretty useful to help when you're trying to close the gap.
I think that definitely helps, at least with a couple of startups too, in that I think obviously like the strongest position for you, and the one that you want to be in at least, is you want to be charging into people. But at least when you know that you can't do that, you have a way to at least be able to generate damage against people when you don't have the capability of doing the charges.
Yeah, because especially in some matchups, some different, missions, there will be too big of a gap for me to be able to close. I can close a pretty surprising distance with the army. There's a lot of mobility here, but that doesn't mean, fool me once type, it's going to be if I fight, for instance, Terradron, or somebody else is going to be backfield, I'm not going to be able to close the gap in one turn. And that makes it, going for the big boy alpha strike like I am, I need to be able to do something with my turn if that something isn't immediately initiating combat.
I'm actually taking a look at something real quick because I was just thinking about too the strength of your shooting phase. Let's see. Trainer. Okay. Looking at it, I guess because I've never had the ability to kind of consider this a lot of the times, is the ability to, if you concentrate fire, say, on a unit that's being held up by a tar pit, get rid of the tar pit with all the mortal wounds you're throwing out and all the damage you're throwing out. And then that way you can be able to do a follow-up charge with a freed up unit afterwards.
Yeah, it's definitely useful to be able to clear screens. Like in the fight against Malone and the Soul Blight, I was unable to kill the Necromancer, but the 10 skeletons in front of him died before they got to do anything. Yeah. Which was, that's wildly useful. And then, had the game not ended as quickly as it did and not went as well as it did in my favor, it would have been good to be able to have that opening available.
Okay. So let's go ahead. We got the army rosters here. I don't think there's really anything we need to be talking about that is too relevant. I guess some people may want to know, like, so the Thunder Tusk. We got 2 Thunder Tusk in here, and this is just to kind of give a little bit of army diversity. Is this because of the ranged capability for them?
everything I did as far as research was concerned and other people's opinions told me do not use Thunder Tusks for the points. They don't shell out enough damage and they're not as useful as the Stonehorn in any form, except save maybe the Huskard on Thunder Tusk because he becomes a priest. But as a result of only getting one hero and it being the Frost Lord, the only real reason they're in the list is because I could only swap one Thunder Tusk that's there currently out for one more Stonehorn Beast Riders. But having only one means the Frost Wreath Ice and stuff like that, I won't get as much out of it. Being able to have two different, sources for those mortal wounds make it a little more efficient. Now, in our fight, it wasn't as useful because it's better against bigger units. So your units were big, but that was vertically.
So we're going to get going here with my tribe. Now, this one I actually went out with the Glowy Lantern to go with Extremely Intimidating because I was looking at my Kraken Eater going, I need more reliable defense. And while I can do a Mystic Shield, that's great when I occasionally get it off and it doesn't get unbound. Extremely Intimidating is essentially the same thing, except it's taking off from a person's hit roll instead of adding on to my defense roll here. So let's get on to what the battle plan is. Apex Predators. Only leaders can hang on to the objectives. You got to be 3 inches with them. And they follow the normal scoring here. The score 1 for 1, 1 for 2, 1 for the most, and then doing for the battle tactic. And this is not a fun one for you with the way that your army's constructed.
Yeah, and looking at all the new battle plans they had available and all the options, immediately I was like, this is the one I don't want to play. Yeah. Because having only one hero or leader, it makes it to where at the most I can only control one objective. And if someone was to say, beat him to death with a giant hammer, then I wouldn't be able to control any objectives. Now that's just a vague, hypothesis, but definitely didn't. It's exactly what happened, and I suffered for it.
Yeah. That said, I honestly don't think like a lot of people realize it. And even me, I'll always look at Kragnos' hammer and go no, I can't be like that. So here we are with the opening round. You, of course, got everything deployed first because it's all in one battalion. And with the way the battle pack works for the General's Handbook, then you actually get to dictate who goes first. And so you decided to go first. I had my Kraken Eater here basically trying to hold a pass. I had Kragnos here because, I was looking for a counterpunch in this setup. I needed him available to charge in order to get that massive damage off of it. And so I wanted to make sure that I had as many bodies between him and you for me to be able to get that counter charge in after your turn was done. And I unfortunately couldn't get everywhere because I had this little opening here, but I figured you weren't going to try and go down south right there. But I put the big defensive Kraken Eater right here. And then I was just making sure to clog up the middle behind him so that way I can be able to clear it out for Kragnos later on.
Yeah, and you had put the Kraken Eater prior to me deploying. So as soon as I saw that you had somebody close enough for me to get to, my instincts were just, all right, good. We're going to beat that guy up.
Yeah. And honestly, you really could have. The only thing I would say is in your shooting phase, you mentioned that your vultures went to Kragnos. You did the harpoons on the man crushers, and then you did the frost wreath ice for the Kraken Eater. And with your battle tactic being slay the warlord in that round, I would have. Do you think, honestly, should you have just focused everything at the Kraken Eater then instead of dividing it between the 3 people?
Yeah. What I did was I overestimated the capabilities of the Stonehorns and didn't anticipate a failed charge with such a short range. Because in my mind, it was, okay, I can throw a couple things at him, knock a couple wounds off, and then there's no way I won't be able to kill him with 3 Stonehorn Beast Riders and my Frost Lord. Unless, of course, one of them didn't make the charge because I was greedy.
Yeah. Well, you almost actually still did it, even with all the other stuff, because going also with you, though, is that, I do have the 5-up Feel No Pain, and that goes into it so much for just drawing out a fight with that. And you still almost brought him down. Yeah, he was at 4 wounds left by the time our round kicked off.
Yeah, it was really close. And I know there's a very good chance that the Frost Lord could have done those 4 wounds too. It's just,
yeah.
I get too I guess they were too hungry. That was it.
So we got to the charge phases. So 3 stone horns come in order to take on the Kraken Eater. The Frost Lord wasn't in there. It was just all the Stonehorn Riders.
Yeah, because the Frost the Beast Riders at the top there, I rerolled their charge, and as a result, I couldn't fit the Frost Lord in. That was the big misplay.
Yeah, you're fishing for a little bit extra. Honestly, though, I mean, you had it was 7 was the first one.
I rerolled a 7 into a 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should have stuck. And I told myself before that when I was making the army, I said, okay, don't re-roll 7s because it's the most common result. And it's good enough.
Was the 7 going to let the Frost Lord get in there?
Yeah, because it would have brought me around the other flank.
Yeah.
It was.
Okay.
I was so close. Even with the 4, I almost had it. It's just that terrain piece being there, slowing me down that 1 little inch, and it was. Oh, if it had been a 5, I wouldn't have been okay. But it just had to be a 4.
So we get through with the combats then. The Frost Lord at least will score you the victory point here. You did have 1 more objective than I held right now, so you got the second one from that. 4 wounds left on this guy doesn't get you the battle tactic. And that's kind of a killer too on that, because you were able to bring him down the next turn. So we get to my turn. And mine essentially was, I take the War Stomper, go and get this objective, probably go and try and hunt this guy down. You redeployed, actually. And that's one of the things about this game I always forget about, is redeploy. And I know I always hear good things about it. And in my mind, the 1 or 2 times I've done it, I've always moved 1 inch or 2 inch. Honestly, though, making a 3 charge to a 5 charge isn't that bad of a bargain. I'd love to make it more of a 6 charge, get the 3 inches on it. Even growing a charge to a 7 would be great. Yeah, then yeah, you're at about 50%. You're at more than 50% still for making it, but a 7 charge, there's a little bit more room for error for that. So
yeah, and my thought process was, okay, that thing's gonna beat up my Thunder Tusk, and I just had to get out of it. They are. As far as all the other people were concerned, they aren't the best in melee.
Yeah. So we get the Man Crusher over here moves out to make room for Kragnos to come in. So that way Kragnos can be able to hopefully make a charge around here to go into here. And I definitely was fishing for the pile-in to help get into the Frost Lord after that. If maybe there was an opportunity for a redeploy, it might have been better, honestly, to go for this one, in a counterintuitive kind of way. But I guess that would have been like, I'm not sure. Were you thinking? No, you weren't thinking. That's right, because the 3-inch range on the mace. I don't think anyone imagines 3-inch range on the Dread Mace.
Yeah, and that was the one thing. It's very important to know your opponent's army and the capabilities, especially the units that you're most afraid of or worried about in a matchup. And I knew all the things he was capable of. It slipped my mind. And I was like, and then it was he made it just to 3 too. Like it was, it's like it was meant to be. So
yeah, because we get to the charge phase, and I charge 1 Man Crusher into a Stonehorn Rider here, and then we get Kragnos into this one Stonehorn Rider, 30 mortal wounds into that one.
You see, and you go into a fight, and you're like, all right, 4 out of 6 of my units have a ward save. I should be fine. And then that happens.
I think this is going to be one of these abilities in Kragnos too. A lot of people are going to underestimate before they get to it, because sure, he does 0 on the 7. That's 6 out of 36, 1 in 6 chance he's going to do nothing. If both dice are above the number 3, they're never going to be 7. and they're never going to be lower than 16 wounds coming at you. And that's going to be what's going to kill a lot of people when thinking about the math like that, is just get both dice over 3. You're taking out anyone's leader in anything. That's just a 16 minimum even there.
Yeah, it was definitely I wouldn't say surprising because we both went into it knowing what he was capable of, but
Yeah,
actually, yes, I would say it was very surprising.
it is, just because it gets ridiculous above that 7 number. That's where it really gets ridiculous, is above that 7, is above that. You know, the dice rolls 3 or less, 3, 2, and 1. You're okay, even if just one of them is that. Well, if one of them's 2 or 1, you're really great after that, regardless of what the other one is. 2 times 6 is 12. That's still a lot to go through. But above the number 3, 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times 5 is 20, 5 times 5 is 25, 5 times 6 is 30, 6 times 6 is 36. Like, these are all your possibilities once you're above 3 on the die in that. And that's really, I think, what's going to make him so scary
Yeah,
for a
and
lot of people.
it really is a phenomenal ability, especially with all the monsters I expect to see in the meta.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that made it, aside from the fact that trying to fit him into this army is silly because everything I have is expensive points wise. The swing of it worries me because if I really need to, like, it's not something I can bank on. So, I could charge in and be like, all right, I'm going to deal this many mortal wounds. This is what I need, and then roll a 1 and a 2,
Yeah,
and then
that's going to be awful.
and that's not as good. But at least he has that hammer. So
He does. He does have that dread mace. In fact, we get to that point here. So, knowing that I made the charge and I'm going to have the pile in because I made the charge, you take the Stonehorn Rider to do the pile in on the Kraken Eater, to at least try to make this guy the closest model to pile in for Kragnos. You do bring down the Kraken Eater, at least, with this guy as well. And you do make him the closest one. Kragnos is still able to make, though, a pile-in around this guy, because the pile-in rules now are you just need to be within the closest unit. It doesn't really matter that much with the single ones, but I imagine there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be forgetting and remembering that pile-in now is not the closest model, it's the closest unit. So you can do a big circle around on a large blob of units to get something better behind a screen. I think that screens are going to be a little bit less useful then because of that, because at least one of the things behind a screen was you could use the model that enemies on to lock them in to their position, and they can't just maneuver and pile in around the edges.
yeah, and I think that's going to add a lot of versatility as far as the units that get like the bonus pile-ins.
Oh,
Like the
yeah.
6-inch pile-ins, it's going to be great. Like for instance, I want to say the Yetis.
Yep. Yetis are going to be good now.
There's a big fan base. There already was, but now they're just like, no, the Yetis, they're the unit nobody's thinking about that everybody needs to be. And I was like, I just don't want to get any of those things. I want mammoths.
I don't blame you for that one. So we got this situation then, and so we had that one Stone Rider, of course, that piled in the Kragnos. Kragnos wasn't able to beat him because Kragnos sent all his dread maces at the Frost Lord, killed the Frost Lord. Go figure. 3/2 -3 Ren, 4 damage a pop on like 6 attacks. Go figure. That's going to do a bunch of damage.
Yeah, and that the Frost Lord is actually the most survivable model I had on the table too. It's just that mace. I mean, you turn my 3 up to a 6 up real quick, so there was no. And then the ward saves, if you're rolling them 4 at a time, it's not as reliable,
That's true too. But so yeah, kill the Frost Lord. You can't actually claim objectives anymore. You're left down to the battle tactics, which you put up the fight with those. But for both of us, honestly, like, it's not that hard to find a battle tactic that you can work with these armies here that we have. It's not that hard. Certainly you can lock yourself out of a couple, but in the case of, say, like the battle line one, everything in your army was battle line, excluding the Frost Lord. So that was able for me to do that. And everything's a monster. Bring it down works great. So many of these things are really simple to be able to go after, that by you just being limited with them, yeah, it hurt your army. It hurt your army because I can just go tit for tat with you on the battle tactics. There was not really a strategy for making sure I could be locked out of them in the future. And then we had the bonus number you get for killing a monster too.
Yeah, and it was funny that we're, both sides able to get that every single turn. It's not a, like I didn't get it every turn, but
Yeah.
the ability was there for me to do so. So it's, I expect to see a lot of monsters in the meta, but I think we're special cases in this because we were all monsters, both of us all
Yeah.
monsters. So that makes it really good for scoring, but it also makes it pretty easy for your opponent to do stuff too.
It does. Now, granted, I look at mine as I'm bringing 5 models. If you're killing my monsters, you're killing my army anyway. So that's just kind of like it's just more gravy on it. It's a win more function for me that the extra victory point comes from for killing the monsters, except for the babies. I'm going to say that I really hate personally playing Sons of Behemat when a baby gets killed. It's easy to bring down, it's a cheap point to get, but also most importantly, it starts taking away the amount of board presence I can have. I've thought about swapping out a baby to upgrade the War Stomper to a Gatebreaker, but even still, that's one less baby I have, and that's just less board presence. You can't get a big board presence with 4 models with Sons of Behemat, even as big as they are. You just can't get the big enough board presence because it's what you alluded to was Soul Blight. Ambush armies, it's hard to protect against them when you only have so few models. There's a lot of angles you can be picked off from pretty easily, and it's hard to reinforce them and score on objectives.
Yeah, that's a big concern I have going into it. That's why basically my only real tactic is to try and deal as much damage or to get as far across the table as possible as fast as possible. I need to put the pressure on my opponent as quickly as I can, because if not, I don't have enough board presence to sit back, and I don't deal enough damage at a range to be able to, reliably stay away from melee. And as a result, the way I built it, there are very few matchups where I'm actually fearful of the amount of damage something can deal back. I'm not being like overly confident. Just I have enough wounds to where I can feel comfortable in almost all settings. But when you're playing against someone such as yourself with another army of nothing but monsters, and then especially Kragnos, it's like, oh wait, it turns out they can just smack me upside the head, and that's not a normal thing. Like
Yeah.
like against Malone, I was oh no, Blood Knights, and then I realized they're not actually as scary when you have 13, 14 wounds and a ward save. They're rough, but it's not as rough.
Yeah.
Now, had he focused 2 units of Blood Knights on a single mammoth, he would have took it out. But he underestimated, and I did the same thing in our matchup. So that's just how it goes.
I definitely feel that the way I play, one of my weaknesses is that besides the redeploys, I really don't like doing the reactive command abilities. I guess maybe it's not even just I don't like it. It's just that like I don't plug in, zone into a game enough to be able to pay attention to that. But one of the other things I've always had a problem with is ensuring focusing of fire. And I think this version of the game definitely demands better discipline in maintaining focus of fire on your opponent, I find.
Yeah, I mean, if I had kept that in mind, it definitely would have helped me in this case.
So we get to the end. Just pretty much round 1 was that sealed the deal. Beast Claw Raiders came in. They came in hot. It was a nice punch. And Sons of Behemat, tactically at least, I was expecting to be on the counter punch with it. And the terrain helped with that a lot. I don't know what it would have been like if there was a more open board that instead of meeting the Kraken Eater at the pass, you could have just blew right past him to get to some of the other ones. Because, yeah, Kragnos would not have been able to take a charge. He would not have. The War Stomper wouldn't have been able to take in the charge. I definitely was a beneficiary of the board terrain setup for this match, at least. And this is kind of where we get to with this one, though, was that the Kraken Eater was able to hold the pass, and then Kragnos was able to come in with a mighty counter punch against the Boulder Head.
And quite a punch it was.
It was. All right. Well, Michael, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for the game. I hope we'll play another one in the future. And this has been another one of my Bare Bones battle reports with some meat on it. And of course, I want to thank my two patrons, Lynette Mahira and Evelyn Ducote as well. Everyone, have yourselves a good night.